Welcome to the Property Funder podcast. I'm Michael Dean. If you want to block me or if you want to find me on the internet or mute me for that matter, you can get hold of me on @property_funder. I'm here today with Matt or Matthew. Before we go in and dive into that conversation with another specialist finance industry leader, I just want to tell you a little bit about our sponsor. Our sponsor today is Aquilae Capital. Aquilae Capital is a development and bridging lender based here in London, but lending all across England and Wales on projects from £250,000 now up to £25 million, but with a particular focus on refurbishments, conversions, and part complete developments, but also offering ground up development, lending, and also large ticket bridges and small ticket bridges. Now, let's have a chat with Matthew. Do you prefer Matt or Matthew?
Matthew's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We were discussing beforehand. I think I was a guest on a podcast that you organised. I think about 4 years ago.
That's correct.
I think about 2 or 3 weeks before we all got locked down. So
That's
that was
right.
it was an interesting memory. Do you want to tell people who you are, the name of your firm, and what your firm does?
Sure. I'm Matthew Yassin. I'm the MD of Aquilae Capital. We're a debt advisory firm based in Mayfair. We concentrate on structured finance. Our core focus is very much on development, trading businesses, hotels, large portfolios on the commercial side. Our sort of narrative in-house is very much to do with detailed. At the moment, we've got a couple of main sort of points that we like to stay focused on, including micro broking is one of them. That's very much centered on understanding the detail of transactions. I think in this market, it's quite important to do so. Without that, perhaps sending a deal to somebody like yourself may be mistranslated and further down the line, it could fall apart or waste people's time. I think culturally, we are aiming to slightly alter the market, which is why we started the business. I've been in finance for over 26 years now. I started my career in 2003, perhaps. Don't want to go back too long. I did the corporate banking side of things. I also built portfolios for Barclays Capital. I'm a qualified IFA. I've worked in North London for a family office, but my real passion is doing deals and broking, actually, real estate broking. I think with real estate, it can be a very interesting industry. Every deal gives you something. You learn from every deal. Everything has got its own angle. And especially when you go across the asset classes, I think it can be incredibly exciting to understand how a hotel works, for example, how to really break down a structured portfolio or work out, what a good lending angle is for a portfolio of offices or a development for that matter. And the technicality of these transactions really gets me out of bed in the morning. And I think Aquilae Capital as a business want to create that understanding from the broking side and really delve into the details. So micro broking, what that actually means is we run an in-house credit forum before it goes to any lender. When we pick up the deal, we'll obviously do our DD. Anything above 10 million, we generally put together an IM for the presentation. That IM would include all sorts of statistics, data, analysis on the area, just so we know that what we're doing is actually correct. Once we put that together, we would then do an internal credit meeting. We'd run it as a lender would run it. And then, if it passes those sort of points of reference, we give it the green light to go to market. The reason we do this is because there are many instances in our industry where, wasting time is probably the wrong word, but you could create a transaction where there is no transaction to be had. And I'm very much focused on concentrating on actual delivery rather than activity, if that makes sense.
I think I already know the answer to this question, but do you want to just give our audience a good explanation why it's important to be trying to broker a deliverable transaction as opposed to sort of, I guess, the proverbial wild goose chase?
Yeah, I mean, broking's an interesting word, actually. I'd like to see us as more than brokers. Debt advisory is banded around social media and many different competitors, colleagues of the industry. But what does it actually mean? Advice. Advice is direction. Advice is the ability to say no to a good transaction.
Yeah.
Advice is the ability to have a difficult conversation, regardless of what you may think that transaction has or may give you. So really, I think it's understanding why you're doing what you're doing, rather than perhaps sending an email to or an IM, whatever the way you put together your deals, to a collection of lenders and hoping that you get a set of numbers that may or may not work for the client. I really think that we are professionals, and I think to be professional, you've got to act professionally. And that's why we stay in our lane, if you like, and we concentrate on what we're good at. We collaborate with other brokers on things that we don't want to do. For example, I'm a qualified IFA. I've got full CMAP, fully regulated status, FCA, etc. But I prefer to stay away from doing that sort of business. I prefer to collaborate with our ecosystem of brokers. So, for example, recently we collaborated with a rather large brokerage, which you probably know, and they completed a deal for a couple of our developers. Okay, deals that we could have transacted. They were more residential focused, singular units. They were large deals, a couple of £1 million, good fees. But in the end, we've got an agreement with them. They transacted them. They knew where the red line was, and we do the structured finance for the client, and they look after the other side. And I think that sort of understanding and that sort of mentality in the industry, in my opinion, hasn't been there. And I think the more you can collaborate, the better it is for the client, because I think being a master of all trades is difficult, but if you concentrate on what you're very, very good at, you can really excel, and that's the key with Aquilae Capital.
Is that specialisation? I mean, we've spoken to lots, dozens now of your peers in the specialist finance broking market. Is that specialisation something that you think is lacking more generally? Do you think that they're, like you use that jack of all trades analogy? Do you think that there are too many people setting up brokerages or who are running brokerages and they're trying to kind of be all things to all men, but and not doing it particularly well, and clients not necessarily benefiting from it?
It's an interesting question, actually. Go back 6 or 7 years in a low interest environment with a market going in the right direction, you can perhaps be a jack of all trades. It's easy to do things when the sun is shining, I guess. But when it starts to rain or lightning, as we alluded to overnight, things change. And especially when you're looking at structured finance, a development deal is a difficult deal. Okay, it's not an easy transaction, regardless of the levels of LTVs and LTCs, etc. It's always going to be difficult because you've got the deal being underwritten throughout the whole transaction. Okay, you may have gone through the numbers and they might work here, they might work there, but then you've got 3 risk levels, and those risk levels are: you've got valuation risk, you've got QS risk, you've got legal risk, you've got land risk, and all sorts. So I think being a jack of all trades is okay. I'm not saying it's something wrong to do or people shouldn't do it. But if you really want to be good at delivering for your clients, especially, and I'm talking about sub-regional clients, larger SME developers, you've got to be able to show that you're active in that market consistently. If I was doing other areas of finance, such as mortgages or buy-to-let portfolios, let's say, 3 or 4 days a week, and then 1 day a week doing structured finance and development, I would find it difficult to keep up with the market. Every day we have a new development lender coming into our office. Every day we have equity providers, mezzanine providers, funds. We do a lot with the European debt funds. So I think understanding your market and keeping on top of your market is a reason why I think specialisation is very important. And on the back of that, it allows collaboration, because if you can specialise and collaborate, you're not losing anything, because ultimately the individuals that you're collaborating with will collaborate back with you. Our ecosystem of mortgage brokers or portfolio brokers, they feed us their development deals. We've got an agreement reflecting payaways and whatnot. So nobody loses. In fact, everybody wins, and more so for the client. The client isn't underserved. perhaps there's individuals in the industry that want to be a jack of all trades and only are aware of a collection of development lenders that can do what they can do. They could be missing a trick for the client. So I think we follow internally in Aquilae best practice and what actually works. And I think what actually does work is really focusing on what you're good at, getting an ecosystem together and making that work. And for me, the collaborative parts of that element is quite important.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about the collaboration component. We had, I suppose, probably the best examples of it was someone like Jordan McBride, who talked about how he regularly collaborates with other brokers to help them achieve certain outcomes. So, you used the example of equity and MES. We had a deal at Avonmore introduced by a certain broker. Valuation DD didn't quite happen the way we wanted it to, so there was a shortfall. Big deal. Obviously parameters were squeezed to the market standard norms as far as we could. So the only way that the refi of the scheme could happen was with a source of equity in MES, and that equity/MES, I think in this case it was MES, and the MES had to come in very sharp order as well. And so in the case of the second broker, Jordan came along and helped the second broker out. Ironically, the deal didn't happen, so it's always frustrating. But it's a great example. But it would have been a great example of brokers coming together and collaborating and helping each other out. And I've seen a number of other examples of it.
Yeah, I mean, we work with corporate introducers, but one of our good sources of introductions is actually brokers. And I'll give you an example of one deal that also didn't happen. Actually, it was introduced via two different brokers, so there was two levels of introductions, and they didn't really understand the market that they wanted to operate in. It was quite a large portfolio. It was beyond 30 million, and we kind of know that market because we've transacted there and we're active there. We know the individuals in that market, and some of the lenders in that market, or funds if you like, only do 3 or 4 deals a year. So if they're going to do a deal which you introduce to them, they're going to need to know who you are. It's not a case of getting a name of a lender, sending a deal with a load of attachments and thinking, oh, it suits their criteria, they'll do it. It's very much relationship based. It's very much focused. Have you done a deal before? What's your business acumen? How do you approach it? So this particular deal, we worked out where it could go. We said to the broker, we could probably do this. It's a nice deal. It works on all counts. We've done our analysis. Here's the feedback. But the original introducing broker simply didn't want to let go of the client detail. Now, for me, who loses there? The client doesn't know that his deal has been stopped in its tracks because somebody has picked the deal up, not from anyone's fault but the client's, and doesn't want to give away any commission or doesn't want to do a split or simply doesn't want to give up control. And for me, that's really bad. Going back to the way we collaborate, if I give a broker one of my clients, I will pass it and I will wait for the phone call to hear whether the deal's died or is completed. That's the way I operate. I've got no interest in being part of the transaction because we operate on a trust basis and transparency basis. So it's important to, if you are going to collaborate, back yourself with who you're collaborating with. Don't be involved. If you approach somebody to do a deal, trust them to do the deal. And whatever terms of business that you've agreed with them, and whatever type of relationship you have with them, a level of trust should be there to allow that deal to flourish, or perhaps not, depending on the market headwinds or circumstances. We
had Daniel Daggers on back in the summer of last year, and ironically, I think his new Buying London series is out on Netflix today. So
I'll make
on that, it says well worth checking that out. What he was saying, I think what he was saying at the time was that the model that he wants to move to, what he's been moving to, is more of an American style brokerage model, where where the old school of the traditional ethos of estate agents, in particularly in London, was they'd be very much trying to cling on to the client. Right, I've got the mandate. Everyone has to come through me. If I don't sell it, no one's selling it until you fire me, basically. And the way and Daniel's approach is let's rip that model up. And actually, let's go and collaborate with as many brokers and as many agents in the market effectively fee share on the basis that what's the most important outcome here? What's the most important result? The client gets the best service and the client has the best outcome. Sounds to me like the way that you're thinking about collaboration with other brokers is of a similar mindset. So I've got to say I've got a lot of time for that.
It's nice to hear that, and I'll pick up something that you said, fee sharing. I disagree on that point, not with you, but on that statement, because ultimately, if you do a deal with a client, he'll come back, or she'll come back, or they'll come back. So really, you're not sharing a fee. All you're doing is creating a relationship. And if you do 10 deals with that client, you've shared 5 fees each, if you like, if you do a 50-50 split, just using that as an example. So nobody actually loses. Aquilae Capital are a relationship-based business. We don't want to do 1,000 transactions a year. We want to work with clients that we know. We want to work with clients that we trust. We want to work with clients that we can service. And if we can't service them, one of our ecosystem of brokers or lawyers or valuers or QSs will be able to help their cause when it's a real estate focused inquiry. And I think that's the mindset element of collaboration, because it's okay to say, okay, well, I'll reach out to somebody who knows the market and hope for them to send me terms and I'll represent the client. That's non-collaboration, in my opinion. Collaboration means I've got a good client, I trust you enough to do the business and stay away from the business that I do with the client, or have an agreement and work that way. And if you can do that, it's difficult. I'll be honest. Others struggle with it, letting go completely. But if you've got a level of trust there in our industry, and you know that the individual dealing with that particular part of the client's circumstances will leave everything else alone as per the agreement, then I don't see why we can't do more of that. Because there's probably a handful of clients that we do structured finance for. They've got their own mortgage brokers, and they've got their other financiers for other things that they're doing, IFAs, etc. So, and that works brilliantly. And on occasion, in fact, on quite a few occasions, because I've been in this industry for a while, I actually know the mortgage broker anyway. So when they send me, the name, I was like, okay, brilliant. So I'll call the guy up or the lady up and say, look, just so you know, I'm doing a bridge or a development or a hotel or whatever for the client, and they're okay with that. And then we'll have an agreement, and the client will stay within that sort of ecosystem. Again, I'm referring to that word a lot, but it's best advice. And going back to being a debt advisor, we've got to give clients advice rather than run for fees. Fees are a reward for a good job, in my opinion. A fee should be deserved, and a fee should also be justified. And by being paid a fee, you've got to understand how you're benefiting the client, rather than just hoping to get paid.
Yeah, and I think I'm always drawn to the old Zig Ziglar quote, and certainly our audience will be bored, maybe bored of hearing this, or maybe they won't. But it's always useful reminding us that it's that you can have everything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want. And I think that's kind of what you're saying in a nutshell,
Michael. Again, empathy is one of my keywords. I think there should be a bit more empathy in our industry. I think there should be a bit more sort of, commercial viewing. People come into our office and say, we'll pay you 2% profit. I normally say, well, actually, you know what, give the client 1% back. We'll take 1 or less, or depending on the deal. We don't want to maximize profits on particular deals. We want relationships. Relationships allow businesses to last. You can make money on deals, but really to be successful, to really be successful, to have longevity in the business, you build a level of trust and you become part of the client's team. And by doing so, you've also got to have a scar. You've also got to give up a bit here, or do something outside of the box for that client. And then over time, in retrospect, when you look back retrospectively, you'll see the benefit of that particular action. The other big thing we do at Aquilae Capital is retrospective broking, I call it. And this very much this process or this way of broking is looking back. So, for example, if a client comes up to me and says, I want to build 58 units in South London, and I need 10 million quid for it. Okay, great. Well, we go to the market, we do our cash flow, we do internal cash flows at Aquilae. We, depending on their sales and marketing strategies, etc. So we work out what whether it's a peak debt, whether it's a traditional development finance facility, and so on. Once we do that, and we have our internal credit policy, we then go to the market. Okay, and possibly as an IM at 10 million. We then get a collection of terms, 2 or 3 sets of terms. I'm not a fan of going over the whole market, because I think if you disappoint 9 out of 10 lenders enough of the time, they probably won't pick the phone up to you. So we'll go to 3 or 4 that we think suit that particular asset, that particular client, and that particular deal. We'll then give the client a representation of the market options, and he'll choose probably on cost. We will then advise and say, okay, well, cost perhaps shouldn't be your key factor in your decision here. Anyway, the decision is made. Fast forward 24 months. We'll bring that spreadsheet back up. We'll take the client for lunch or coffee or breakfast or whatever, and we'll say, okay, well, let's look back. Okay, so we've chosen the cheapest option. Was it really the cheapest option? Did you complete the development 3 months before you thought you would, or did it overrun? What's the net cost of this particular completed development? You were disappointed when I quoted 9 or 10 or 12%. Did it cost you 12%? And more often than not, it never is the initial cost that's been quoted, further depending on the drawdown profile and all the rest of it. But that part, Michael, is where relationships are really made post completion. Yes, you go through a journey with the client to get the loan done. The journey is full of potholes, as we know, and it can be challenging. But that journey should create a bit of trust between you and the client, depending on how it ends. Post completion is where the broker really should step in. We try and attend probably 20% of the QS visits to understand the transaction, to understand the problems, because everything you learn from the QS visit to retrospective broking to looking back to building that relationship, you can apply to the next client or to the younger generation coming through. And I think that those are the parts where you can really add value on our side of the business, rather than getting a really good set of terms, negotiating 50 basis points and transacting the deal. Yes, that's great as well, but it's the things in the shadows where I'd like to think Aquilae Capital really steps out in front of the crowd.
Yeah, I think when it comes to broking, obviously never having worked as a broker, but obviously having to deal with brokers and obviously transacting, we ourselves have transacted, and our respective firms have, and obviously we've done literally hundreds of deals with brokers overall. You always have, we use the expression rate whores, you've got your rate whores, and you've got people actually just looking for the best interest of the client. At the end of the day, whichever way you skin it, most of us that are in the mainstream of the market, we'll get our money from the same places or similar places, right? It's like some collection of banks and pension funds and credit funds, all of whose money ultimately probably comes from effectively the same place anyway. So your credit parameters are always roughly the same, give or take 5% here or there. Your pricing is almost roughly always the same, give or take 75 to 100 basis points one way or the other. So in many ways, actually, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can do in terms of negotiating those key headline parameters. And I think actually the things that you talk about here, first of all, the retrospective broking, I think it's possible. I'm not saying you're the only person that does it, but it's the first time someone's actually raised that as a concept for me. And I think many of our audience, I'm sure many of the brokers in our audience who are watching and listening will be like, oh, that's interesting. Now, of course, it's like any idea, and everyone can copy it, but the execution of it is actually the hard part most of the time. And I also think that being there for the QS visits, whether you can change QS's opinion is a different matter. But I think if I'm a client and I've got my finance broker with me with the bank's monitoring surveyor on site, then it's another pair of hands to chase the lender for the drawdown. It's a very rare thing that you'll have a broker pursuing a drawdown. The first drawdown, obviously the purchase, the the drawdown that gets them their proc fee, yeah, they'll chase that. But actually, the subsequent ones that they're not getting paid for, that happens very rarely, and I've probably seen it maybe half a dozen times. I've seen that, and I think that does set you apart. There are obviously downsides to you as an organisation to do that, but from a client outcome perspective, I personally can totally understand why your clients keep going back to you, and why the clients will be very loyal to you, and the people that introduce clients to you would trust you with those clients.
Yeah, I think in life generally, okay, and I'll come back to that point. It's the simple things, okay. It's the simple things that actually make the bigger difference. And going on a QS visit, assuming it's not in Newcastle or in Glasgow, although there is one in Cornwall that I need to go to shortly.
You can save that for the summer.
Yeah, I shall. But I've been promised the lobster on the beachfront. But anyway, it's not hard to go and visit the client, do the walk around, understand the questions that are coming from the QS and the answers. And I especially think it's good for the younger brokers to go because, what is development? Development for some people is a set of spreadsheets, but actually look at the romantic side. We're building buildings. And some of the buildings that we funded are beautiful. I regularly say to clients, away from the financial side of things, can I just say you've just built something incredible? Look at the sort of empathetic side of life. It's okay to be that way because ultimately you're building buildings for people to live in, for hotels to operate within, for people to have offices in, similar to this one. So it's important to show clients there's a bit of empathy over and above making money or transacting deals. And that is not hard to do, but that's where you get the most trust. That's where you get the most out of the relationship. And you're right. If I was the client, I'd be happy. My team is here. I feel supported. Okay. And if you do it once, or if you do it 3 times during a 24-month development, that's up to you. But as long as you do something like that, the client will actually know that you're there on his team or her team. Because ultimately, once you're paid, it doesn't mean that client won't become a client again. Because revolving door is a term that I like to use. We need to transact with our clients. And if you want to protect that individual from going elsewhere, then stay on his or her team. Stay on their team. It's the simple things. For example, with younger brokers, they ask me, how can I be successful? Okay. Reread your emails before you send them. Don't get emotional. Okay. And ask questions. The only silly question is the question that doesn't get asked. Okay. I have been in finance 26 years and I'll still ask you silly questions because the one thing we can't do in our business is assume. Because if we assume, that's when the deck of cards will start, crumbling. And unfortunately, as simple as those 3 things sound, not everyone, abides by those practices. And I think a simple spelling mistake in the first sentence is avoidable. I think, assuming something very simple, which is wrong, is also avoidable. I think when a lender tells you, credit said no because of X, Y, and Z, it's important to understand why, okay? A no in our industry is golden because a no, you're learning. A yes, you're not really learning. You're learning that, okay, well, this client suits Avamore's criteria and we move on to the next stage. But a no is where you really learn because why is it a no? Have I missed something? Has our credit team missed something, internal Aquilae's credit team? Have we not done our DD correctly? Why have we got a no? Is the build cost not correct? I thought 230 a square foot would work. It should be 245. If you understand that no, the next time you transact with that client, the next time you engage with that lender, the next time you pick up an appraisal, you will be 0.5% better. And I think it's David Brailsford that says, incremental.
It's marginal gains.
Marginal gains, and eventually you will get to that 85, 90% element, and you can then start mastering your industry. And talking about mastering your industry, if you can say no to a good deal, that's when you really understand what your time is worth. We've all been juniors, we've all been entrants into the industry. At that point, you say yes to everything. Everything that comes on your desk, you think is viable, you want to try and transact it, you'll hope it sticks, etc., etc. But the moment you climb up to the top of the mountain and you understand, I've only got 10 hours in a day or 8 hours in a day or however long you work in a day, I've only got this many clients that I can service, and understand your time and the value of your time, even if the deal looks good, even if the client looks good, saying no is actually much more powerful, because that client will actually come back and break down your door. Every person I've said no to recently wants to come back and do business with us. Why are you saying no to me, they say. What's wrong with this? And you can, if you stand up and understand, because you've learned from the previous no that you've had from that credit team, and say, look, your build costs are out. You can go to another broker. They can probably get you a set of terms. In fact, they will get you a set of terms. But I can tell you right now, when it goes to the QS, it will fall apart. So I'm going to say, thank you, but no thank you on this occasion, because the next 2 months, I've got my time back, and I want to redirect that for other clients and other deals that are a little bit more viable. And all of that is advice. It goes back to the debt advisory side. Give them the advice. Why are you saying no? Well, it's a good deal. Well, no, it's not a good deal. There's a lift shaft going in, so you need to compensate for that, or there's additional groundworks, there's contaminated land. Little things like that are very, very important. And all of that you learn from people like Avamore. When Avamore say, actually, our credit team said no because of this, this, and this, and that's where the real golden nuggets lie in our field of industry. And if you can pick them up and understand what they're there for and really use them as your own armory, you'll come back bigger, stronger, and you'll last the distance.
I love the sort of the reference to the psychology of the power of saying no to something. I think it's absolutely spot on. I think it's always very brave, isn't it, to be able to say no to a client or say no to a good deal. Well, obviously you say it's a good deal, but if you can spot holes in it and you can see issues with it. Do you have moments of regret where you effectively, the principles that you stand by now,
mm-hmm.
presumably you have them because you've learned from the mistakes of the past, where you spent 2 months, 3 months pursuing a deal and it didn't pan out, and that was, and I suppose another way of putting it is the opportunity cost. Every opportunity has an opportunity cost associated with it, right? So you've learned from the opportunity cost of the failed deals of the past, of the challenging deals of the past.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably 2 or 3 ways to answer that question. The first is I'll give you a live example. Probably one of my top 3 clients at the moment, very active, and we're putting together a drawdown facility for him because they're going to move into regional development. So we're talking to funding lines to allow him to do that. The first time I spoke with that individual, we had an argument and we hung up on each other because I called him and said, look, I understand you're doing some developments and da-da-da-da-da. And he just said, okay, well, you can't go to this lender or that lender or that lender or that lender. So my shoulder popped up and I said, well, if you're giving me such a restrictive area to work in, I simply can't work with you. So anyway, the conversation ended abruptly and off it went. About a month or 2 later, I thought, let me try this again. Let me call this individual up again and say, look, perhaps we got off on the wrong foot and let's re-engage. So we did that. We met up and I understood why he said what he said. And it wasn't anything that I thought he was saying. It was for reasons of his own. Subsequently, we transact, a lot of business every year. And he's become, one of my good relationships. There's a lot of trust there. And we're integrated as part of his team. So there is elements. I mean, anyone who moves forward in life will take every experience and will learn from it, right? And I think both on the personal and the professional side. And I think to answer your question, yes, of course, our philosophy at the moment and our practices and our the way we do things and the way we don't want to do things are a collection of experiences being applied into a business function that I want to represent as Aquilae Capital within the market, because I think there's space to do that in our market. but it's dynamic. It's constantly evolving. A year ago, it's probably improved incrementally, as you say. And I think we're consistently learning. I shall learn from this interview. I shall take things that you say, perhaps, and apply them to my daily routine. And I think that's important because, going back to my first statement, real estate is full of surprises. From an asset that a gentleman had a few years ago that I came across, where he bought a field in 1963, let's say. And then 5 years later, Network Rail decided to build a train line across it. He was lucky enough to have to put a bridge, a small bridge, but 3 or 4 meter bridge or 5 meter bridge. And the deal that he struck with Network Rail is they will pay him per train. Okay? Yeah. And the best thing about this is it was CPI linked. So at the time they were like, look, we'll give you £5 a train, whatever. Now it's like £1,000 a train. So he sits there all day in this field, undeveloped. Okay, how many trains have gone across today? 20 trains, great, I've made 20 grand. To a guy harvesting water on an island in Essex somewhere, per bottle. So real estate is full of little joys, and I think you've just got to enjoy what you do. You've got to apply your philosophy to what you want to do. I'm not saying others that do it differently are wrong. We just like to sit in our corner of the room and represent the way we want to represent. And I think, being in Aquilae now 15 or 16 months, the reception that we've had has been incredible. The yeses, the nos that we've had has been great because the learning techniques. And I think, looking forward, we look forward in excitement because, we've done some really good deals in a difficult market, and trust is there. And I think the philosophy is working. I think, in moving away from the norm, moving away from jack of all trades, moving away from a hard shoulder or not allowing other people names of lenders and things like that, it's positive and it's not negative. And if people want to grab clients, then that's fine. Let them do so. We're not worried, because if you know and you're confident that you're good at what you do, stick to your philosophy, like some of the sports teams perhaps, they'll get to where they want to get to.
Yeah, I think that definitely resonates for me. Having been both client and lender,
Mm-hmm.
you certainly see the power and the value of the approach. Because I sense you're not worried about someone trying to steal your clients, because you have such faith and belief in the level of service that you give them, the strength of the relationship, the trust. You used the word trust a few times now. The trust that they have in you, and I think, and I do believe that actually is. I talk about it from a lending perspective. Certainly, when I was more operationally involved in Mayfair,
Mm-hmm.
the sales team, I'd say we don't sell financial services, we don't sell development lending, we don't sell bridge loans or refurb loans. We sell trust. Trust goes both ways. We have to convince you, the broker, to trust us with your client, because they trust you. And if we breach your trust, you breach your client's trust. And then what happens is that's where basically most brokers, most large brokerages have a favourite go-to handful of lenders for each individual type of loan, don't they? And your only way in is when one of the incumbents, fucks up. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
they've got to make a mistake,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. That's your only way in. But it's the same as a broker, isn't it? Because if you put your neck on the block with a lender, you recommend the lender lets you down. You've let the client down.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you've got to go and get another valuation, you've got to get another set of legal fees and MS fees and whatever it is. Next time that client's got a requirement, are you guaranteed of getting that inquiry?
You can turn that around, actually.
Okay.
It's not always the lender's fault that you get let down.
Does the client see it that way? Because sometimes it's the optics. No matter, it could be no one's fault, but the optics from the client's perspective it's your fault.
Okay, I'll actually give you a very recent example. Look, A debt advisor or a broker, as you're referring to, is an access to a market of opportunities for individuals that need funding. And I think the value of a disappointment halfway through the process is the broker or the debt advisor. Because if that client, for example, went direct to Abermore, okay, one reason or another, 3 months in, credit says no, or the team says no. If that individual doesn't have a broker, then they are genuinely out to sea without a paddle, right? But if the deal doesn't happen and it's broker-led, and it's justified, the build costs are out, or the valuation's been downvalued, or there is no things that shouldn't have been spotted have been spotted. A good broker can turn that around and say, okay, that's fine. I've got 3 horses, and I'll come on to second horse management, which is another narrative that's going through Aquilae. You reignite that horse and you go with it. A really good broker, especially in this market, will have always someone in the background, always, because at the moment, trust is a big word, and it's probably the wrong way of saying it. You can't rely on the option that you've gone with to necessarily get over the line. And I mean that because we've probably done in excess of 20 deals that we've now been operational in, okay? And probably half of them had to be either renegotiated or rebroked at some point based on fair commentary from the lenders. One very recent example, 2 weeks ago, Friday 2 weeks ago, we were supposed to draw down a rather large loan, and the incumbent lender or the lender ultimately declined it for one reason or another.
On the day of drawdown.
Well, pretty much on the day of completion. So what does the client do? So we quickly turned it around, and it actually completed on Tuesday this week.
That's a remarkably good turnaround.
Yeah. The client's extremely happy. Yes, there was a bit of cost spillage, but he understood the reasons why it got turned down. Again, I wasn't necessarily annoyed. I was actively understanding what was going on. But it's all about delivery. And, in what we do, there's never going to be an easy solution, okay? You can't expect as a broker to be paid rather large fees. This was a over £5 million loan, so it was a decent loan. You can't expect to be paid big fees and just hope one lender will run with it. You've got to be on top of things. And as soon as the cracks started showing, the second horse was slowly being ramped up. And when the no did come, it was, there we are, we've already got a solution. The rewrite's already been agreed. We're going to get head of credit on the phone this afternoon. We're going to get the lawyers instructed on Monday. And as I say, the lender that stepped in was superb. I couldn't speak highly of them, and it closed on Tuesday. And the client's very, very happy, and everything's absolutely fine. So yeah, I mean, look, you can be annoyed at being let down by a lender, but you kind of got to understand that it's not the lender's fault always. And the only time it really is the lender's fault is when you try and position something or the problems, and they're overlooked by the business development manager, or they're not taken seriously because people want to hit targets or issue term sheets and so on. So I think it's about being professional on both sides. Sometimes you say, okay, well, look, that's the issue. Are you happy with that issue? If you are, we'll do the deal with you. If you're not, say so. And on this occasion, I don't think they picked that up early enough in the process and subsequently said no. And that's okay. It's all right. It was all right. And one of my mantras, don't show emotion. We didn't show any emotion. I mean, the lender that did let us down, bless them, I tried to call the underwriter and the BDM, and they thought I'm going to be annoyed or angry. No, I wasn't. And they were very surprised in our reaction. I was like, it's okay. It's all right. You are our client also. The lender is the debt advisor and the broker's client. So I'm never going to ruin that relationship. As long as you can tell me why, okay, we can review this and sort of say perhaps the no could have come a little bit earlier, but it's all right. It's disappointments exist, unfortunately, and it happens everywhere. So it's about managing emotion and managing and understanding transactions. I've transacted many deals, and I think it's experience that allows me to control emotions in that way, rather than 15 years ago I probably wouldn't have would have been a bit more annoyed, perhaps. And probably would have said these things that I would have regretted. But yeah, it's that, and I really want to pass that down. We've got some young guys coming through, and I really want to pass that down because I think that's an important practice. And I think no lender deserves to be shouted at or told things that perhaps they don't want to hear, because it's not always their fault. All right, as long as things are done properly.
Well, yeah. At the end of the day, of course, no one wants to get shouted at when they're at work. But of course, and
it's unacceptable.
We had I don't know if I've spoken about it on the podcast or not, but I remember we had when I started my career in commercial agency at Cushman & Wakefield, and probably about 2 years in, I just joined the investment team, so all the sort of newly qualified surveyor, and we had a meeting, and they said the number one thing is never piss anyone off. Never make an enemy, never piss anyone off. If someone pisses you off and you're on the phone to them or whatever, wait until the receivers hit the receivers down, the line goes dead before you call them a dickhead or a wanker. Definitely don't let them hear it in earshot, because you never know when you're going to need that relationship. You never know when they're going. Particularly in commercial agency, it's a broker to broker, agent to agent type of industry. The selling agent, you want to get there early from them, so you can place it with the client first and secure a position, and one hand washes the other and all that sort of thing. So I think it sort of works in the same way. But just touching on, you mentioned sort of, maybe you would have been a bit more hot-headed when you were younger. But let's talk about, what sort of, the moment in your career that you sort of have the biggest regret about, where maybe as a broker, where you probably did lose a client, or you lost a relationship. Can you talk about a time that something like that happened? And what you learned from it.
Yeah, I think I'll sweep that other statement up. So the irony is that we've got another deal in legals with that bank at the moment. So you're right, the relationship's paramount. The deal's secondary, the relationship's paramount. In terms of regret, perhaps starting real estate earlier. I've got a passion about it. But deals that didn't happen, yes.
And maybe where you might have lost a relationship or lost a client on the back of it.
I retained the client ultimately, but I did lose a rather large deal to a corporate debt advisory desk a few years ago. It was a large development for over 100 units. And I guess I took my relationship with the client for granted. Is probably what I'd say.
Interesting.
If I'm going to be completely honest with you. Because we just transacted a £14 million deal. This was coming up, and I think it was 29.5. So I was sort of counting chickens, thinking, this is 8 or 9 years ago. So I was in my younger days as well. So I probably took it quite lightly, and didn't understand the requirements that the client needed, or really understand what the situation was. Okay, again, I was probably a jack of most trades at that point. All right, I was doing development, I was doing mortgages, I was doing portfolios. So I kind of picked that deal up, ran with it for a bit. And I remember going to see the client in his office, and he's a lovely man. He went red, and he said, "I've got something to tell you." And I was, what you got to tell me? On this transaction, I'm going to go with one of the corporate debt advisories that we both know for this particular debt piece. And that probably is my biggest regret. I didn't take it badly. We've done many deals, and we've actually got a couple of deals going through that particular client at the moment. But I think he understood that on that occasion, I perhaps didn't, or I was a jack of too many trades. And at that point, for a building like that, you need to really understand what you're doing. And if you're dipping in and out of development, or dipping in and out of bridging, or dipping in and out of whatever function that you want to operate in, and you don't really understand who's operating, what lenders are there, who's top of the market, whatnot, you will lose it. And I did lose that particular deal, which is very disappointing. I retained the client, and it was okay. And in fact, that made our relationship stronger, if I'm honest. We've done 3 or 4 big deals since. And, I think the fact that we were humble, the fact that we didn't react, the fact that, we let a 30 million quid loan walk out the door, but we didn't move any stones or create any problems. I think that made the client understand that actually we are there. And then when we focused properly on structured finance and really gave up all the other parts of finance that we didn't want to be necessarily operational in, he then re-engaged, and we've subsequently done deals similar to that.
Yeah, I was just wondering, just listening to that, was that sort of the seminal moment for you that made you realise that you needed to focus and drill down into a really specific specialist area?
Very much so. Yeah. Very much so, because I think, a building of 135 units and a cash flow of that magnitude, if you're guessing and you're thinking, I know lender A, B, and C, they've got the ability to do 30 million, I'll just send them this, that, and the other, then you won't transact that deal. Even if the lenders can do the deal, they'll see right through it, and they probably won't do it with you. So yeah, you're right. That was the moment when I realised, actually, what do I like doing? I love doing structured finance. Give up your regulated license. Give up your interest in buy-to-let mortgages. 3 or 4 million quid buy-to-let mortgages. Give that all up. Stick to what you're good at. And now, I'd like to say we're experts at what we do, and the focus is mainly on that. And to stop any sort of slipping through the net, we've created this ecosystem, which by the way, the last 3 or 4 months we've been paid rather handsomely from our friends in the industry that have transacted for our other clients in the mortgages and the buy-to-let portfolio. So everyone's winning. Everyone's winning.
You're, even if you're not having to do the running, you're still winning because
still winning. Yeah, still winning, and the guys are going to win as well, because we've picked up a couple of deals and they know that we're good at what we do, and I think that kind of ties in with this whole conversation of philosophy and ethos that you learn from good experiences, bad experiences. You learn from the no's from the lenders, and just look around you. You look around this. Our industry is great. We get treated. We get taken places. We've got award ceremonies. We get paid pretty handsomely on good deals. Yes, it's difficult, but hard work should give you rewards. So just look around you and use what you've got. You're a very, very knowledgeable man, and you said you've been on the lender side and the client side. I'll pick the phone up to you next time. Say, Michael, what do you think?
I have people. I actually had a broker. I was skiing on holiday at Easter time, and had a broker friend who had a spec dev shed development that he was looking to fund, and he said, "Oh well, the clients were, the lenders wanted to fund it without a pre-let to XYZ tenant. I'm sure you can work out who the tenant is. It's industrial, but this big covenant sniffing around. What do you reckon? What should I do?" Now, I've never funded an industrial development in my life. I've never owned industrial property in my life. So I can't really give advice on that. But one thing I know is that if you tell a lender something and the lender gets excited about that because it makes the deal even better, the lender was already willing to lend on it before, but then you introduce something new that makes the deal even better, the lender is going to naturally get attached to that more attractive, more secure outcome. So I said to him, do not talk about that potential more favourable outcome, because they will then effectively
hang their hat on it.
They'll hang their hat on it, and they'll make the deal conditional on that. So, to your point, yes, by all means pick up the phone and anyone, if they want to pick up the phone or send me a message and say, what do I think? Don't worry, I'm not going to nick your client or nick the deal off you. Well, no, that's not how we work. Not how we work.
Yeah, I mean, and there's knowledge everywhere, and people use me. They call me up. What do you think? And I like that, and I think that's. I think these are all resources, and if you can use your resources rather than lock yourself in your room and think, right, no one's going to nick my clients, I want to do all the deals, you'd be much more happier and successful, and the relationships that you forge off the back of that will naturally bring you business. Business is fundamentally about relationships, right? If you can build those and look with a long-term view, don't worry about the pound today, worry about the £10 next year. It works really well.
Yeah, you effectively take a what I would term to be a long-term greedy approach, which is very much what Zahara and I have been doing since the start. You don't try and maximise what you can make today. You maximise what you can make over the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. So I think it's really smart. And I think what's also quite smart, what I like about the model you've employed, we often talk about creating a moat around your business. I think there's a misconception, and I think maybe it's being slightly shattered, that to become a broker, I suppose, especially in the non-regulated space, you just need to set yourself up on a desk, desk at the laptop at the kitchen table, phone, and just get cracking. Now, whilst that's true to an extent, there's a level of sophistication that you're clearly demonstrating, and I fully understand that if you want to speak to certain credit fund or debt fund, they're not going to answer the phone or the email if they don't know who you are. And if you present information to them, they expect the information to be presented in a certain way, with a certain detail provided to them. So you talk about doing an IM. You do an IM, I'm sure, because you're professional and that's what you expect to do. But I also imagine you do an IM because there is a large minority of the lenders or the funders that you work with who won't even consider a deal unless you've unless you've packaged that deal for them in a way that it's easy. That executive summary is easily digestible.
Mm-hmm.
They get the key components of it, and then if they're interested, there's another however many 10, 20 pages of analysis and detail that they can flick through if that front page is good enough. And at the end of the day, if you're Joe Bloggs from Joe Bloggs Brokers Limited, and you've only just started doing it, you probably don't have the understanding of the sophistication to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So I think it's quite interesting that you have, I think, to some degree, created a bit of a moat around your business, the types of loans that you can do.
Thank you. That's a real compliment, that is, especially coming from yourself. So thank you very much. But I think it also demonstrates that you understand the deal. If you've put that IM together, it demonstrates that you've done the data analysis, you've found the data points, you've collected them, you've put it into a PowerPoint, you've put it into a PDF, and whether it's a brochure or an attachment, you've taken the client's appraisal, you've ripped the numbers out of there, you've reappraised them, and you've applied them elsewhere. And I think that shows that you've done some underwriting, some DD, if you like, and that's quite important. But going back a bit, so Aquilae, when we started, one of my fundamentals was organic growth. Okay, when I kicked the business off, and everyone's got their own approach, and there's no right or wrong, but I'm seeing lots of new brokerages spring up, which is great, by the way. Entrepreneurs, applying commercial views, going for it themselves, which is fantastic, and I really, really am happy to see that. I know most of them, and I want that. I want to see that. But for me, when we started Aquilae, we didn't even stick our heads above the parapet once, because what I didn't want to do is put on LinkedIn or social media and say, hi there, we are a new brokerage, we're going to do development, we're going to do bridging. I instead wanted some substance. So I said to my team, until we've done a few deals, we're not going to put anything up. We're not going to ask for any followers. I want pure organic growth. And so what we did was, for about 3 or 4 months until the pipeline was building and the first or second deal started dropping, we then said, this is what we've done. Again, retrospective, rather than, saying what you want to do, tell people what you've done. Okay, I think that's much more powerful, because then you've got some meat on the bone, to coin a phrase, if you like. And I think that is another part of our business that I want to demonstrate on this podcast, that we are very different. We are extremely different. We don't want marketing for marketing's sake. We want substantial marketing because we're good at it. If we hadn't done a deal, I probably we wouldn't even be visible on social media, because I think the way I want to portray Aquilae is we have got things that we can back up. I talk about the practices, philosophy. Come to our office and you shall see. I can show you our internal systems that rip clients' appraisals apart. I've had many clients send me 42% profit on costs. Run it through our own, send it back. It's 15 actually. It doesn't work. It's you've forgotten this, that, and the other, and you haven't applied that. You put in a 5% finance cost or a 3% contingency. Little things like that, and the client's like, "Oh wow, so what do you mean?" I was like, "Well, it doesn't work. There's not enough profit, or you've got to input some more equity," and that's quite helpful. That really shows advisory. So, and that's what Aquilae is about. It really is not about flying a flag. It's really about demonstrating action and showing what we've done and not what we can do. And I think that's quite important. And I've said everybody to the team internally, we're going to walk around the mountain the long way and the hard way where it snows and rains. But when we get to the top, you'll be happier rather than getting a lift. It's just better to put in strong foundations, because ultimately we want to be here in 10 years' time. And I think as difficult as that road is in a difficult market last year, as we both experienced, in the end, it's really reaping its rewards at the moment, especially with the industry and the reception that we've had from individuals like yourself and other lenders and other brokers and other partnerships that we've got. And I think all of that is coming through, and I like that mentality. I like that we are, the way I see it, we are slightly different to others. And I'm not saying that we're better or worse. I'm just saying we're different. And it's important to be different, because then when we are competing with a client, whether we win or lose that client, at least they've got a choice. It's not, it's not two same propositions. We will do something fundamentally differently to somebody else. And if that doesn't work, then that's okay. We won't win every deal, and that we understand that. But I think that's quite important. And that's why for the first few months, we didn't even mention that we're doing any business whatsoever until we've done some business.
I just want to touch on your origin story of how you set up Aquilae. Obviously, we've known each other for a little while in your sort of past lives, and I thought was definitely fascinated by some of the your career trajectory. Had a quick squiz on your LinkedIn beforehand as well, just to familiarise myself with it, because you've worked in some of the biggest, most established brokerages in London. In addition, obviously to Aquilae now. What was the thing that motivated you to set up Aquilae? Like you were obviously you were at ARC at the time. Obviously, we had Andrew on the podcast last year.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, it's a well-trodden path, isn't it? People go and work for Andrew for a few years, and then they go and branch out on their own. But what was the spark for you? What was the sort of the straw that you were like, right, we've got to do this right now?
I think yeah. So my previous places where I worked and learnt my trade, to be honest, and credit to those houses that they gave me some ammunition to be the individual I am today, and we've got great relationships with the guys at ARC and at Coroco and other places. So the trigger, I guess, was, so I've had people calling me up for years saying, "Here's some equity. Can we back you? Start a corporate brokerage," or people calling me up saying, "Can we do a JV? Or can we do this? Can we do that?" In the end, I kind of took a decision that culturally I wanted to just shift from the norm a little bit. And I'm not saying the norm was incorrect or correct. I just wanted to apply the way I wanted to do things. And I think in the end, that was probably the factor that made a decision. And, my business partner approached me at the right time, if I'm totally honest, and told me his vision. And they say the stars align or whatever in a difficult market. They kind of did at the time in early 2023, and it was difficult because the guys at my previous place, they're really good, and I miss working with them, if I'm totally honest. It was difficult to move away from that, but I think it was always a path that I was going to go down. I mean, the door was getting knocked on too many times. In the end, we said no to everyone's equity, and we did it the hard way. And I think,
so bootstrapping. I think we knew where we wanted to be. We wanted to be in an area where real estate is prominent.
We took an office because we believe in, getting up, putting your shirt on and going to work. We believe in getting on that phone and start dialing. I think those are, again, simple things that you can really build a business. And it culminated in never being not busy. The one thing we haven't struggled with is business coming through the door. So I'm very lucky to have good relationships with corporate introducers and individuals that transact with myself. And that's kind of allowed us to now, hopefully you'll hear more of us, and now really unwind. We're negotiating on the bigger office at the moment, and really apply things like that. But I think like you, Michael, there comes a point in your career where you think, okay, well, I've got a family now. I want to create a little legacy, perhaps. Do I want to do that this way, or do I want to do that way? And I chose to go this way, and I think that is the right thing to do. I mean, if there was a lot of opportunity at that time, but ultimately, with Aquilae, it's given me the ability to demonstrate the way I think certain things should be done, and we're executing those things.
Yeah. How many of you are there now? Like, how many are you to?
There's 3 advisors and 2 support staff at the moment. We're looking at expanding the team, but again, we're doing it organically. We're making sure that it's the right thing to do. If I want to bring somebody on board, I've got to commit to them. Okay, I've got to understand that I need to give them some business to chew on. I need to give them a home, a place to sit, and so we're doing it step by step, and I think it seems to be clicking nicely. And it's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. We love what we do. We're passionate about real estate. It's great. Even the dark days, even that Friday 2 weeks ago, it was a nice day. It was a difficult day, but it was a nice day.
I mean, I guess, to talk about dark days, I think it was it probably wasn't a 2009 style, it wasn't like a sort of 2009 style baptism of fire, but still baptism of fire by recent standards. If there was going to be a difficult time to be trying to set up a brokerage, especially the type that maybe you could cancel that, but I'll leave it open for you. But yeah, do you think the timing was brave, or do you think actually it worked quite well for you?
Good sailors like rough seas, I think they say, don't they?
Okay.
Look, if you are going to catch the market, don't do it at the top of the market. Do it at the bottom of the market. And I think I'm a big believer in, things have to be difficult in order to be good in the end. Never in my life have I had an easy ride, let's say, and I've always gone round the mountain that way. Okay, and I think at that point, yes, with a young family, just acquired some real estate, so your personal positions were under pressure as well, and all that sort of stuff. I quite liked the difficulty that I was in. Okay, a couple of sleepless nights and so on. But I think in a difficult sort of position, the individual can really excel. And tenacity, one of my mantras, never say never. Things like that really shine through. And if you've got that belief in yourself, and if you've really got that want, and if you want whatever you want, you can do it. And to the younger guys, it's a bit of hard work, but hard work and scars give you a story, and that story is clearly asked for by people the later down the line, and I think that's quite important. And I like the hardship. And last year, yes, it was difficult. There was last spring, there were moments where you think, okay, well, we're a few months in, there's been a few no's going on, and we made a corporate decision when we understood that development simply wasn't working. Every appraisal that we reappraised internally was coming out too low or incorrect, or there was massaging of the figures. we took a corporate decision to concentrate on refinances and different asset classes as opposed to development, and subsequently we did a lot of business, and now, because we understood our market, now we're going back into development. The appraisals are slowly adding up, or a few things are clicking. So yeah, I mean, look, it was difficult, but I tell you what, it feels better now than if it was an easy ride. Because I think if you can survive a storm, then you're going to enjoy the summertime, aren't you?
We've been reflecting on, it's 9 years since it'll be 9 years this October since we incorporated Avon, and we've been reflecting on that pretty much every 15 to 18 months since we started, there's been some sort of crisis. We were 9 months into Avon, we had the Brexit vote.
Mm-hmm.
You had you sort of the following year you had Corbyn general election,
mm-hmm.
And then another general election in 19.
Yeah.
We had COVID, then we have COVID, of course,
mm-hmm.
and we have the and just before you started, we have the Liz Truss, kamikaze mini budget,
which apparently wasn't her fault.
Wasn't her fault. I mean, it's the irony. The irony is obviously we're now looking at likely changing government, and Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak will, of course, will say, well, it's not our fault. I think one of the main reasons why they're going to get voted out, apart from the fact that people are tired of them after 14 years, and it's almost like we're of a similar age. You remember the mid '90s Tories,
it's that again.
It's that again. It's that little Britain sketch, isn't it? Over and over again. I accidentally slipped and fell on whatever. I'm not going to fully repeat it, but I think that because people feel poorer. People feel their mortgages have gone up. They look at the inflation, they look at interest rates, and they blame the government, and they blame and I think they blame Liz Truss. She probably has a point to some degree. It's not entirely within her control, but some of it was because it wasn't credible. That being said, we've I guess going back to the point I was trying to make is that we've been through a lot of flux and a lot of turmoil over the last 9 years. But obviously I think the way I see it is that starting when you did, it's sort of it's almost, it's not quite, of course, but it's the only way is up now. Really, if you start from difficult and challenging beginnings, things can only really progress. For you're gonna see a lot of progression over the coming weeks, months, and years, by comparison to the starting in the most challenging times.
Yeah, I think we won't take that for granted. I think we're going to continue working hard. We're going to continue applying ourselves as if it was a difficult market. I mean, you just mentioned 9 years, and you've had some pretty difficult waves hit against your rocks, if you like. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult time, but in difficult time, you kind of separate the trees a little bit, and I think it kind of suited us, a difficult market last year, because it allowed us to compete on some deals and win those deals, and it allowed us to understand our market, and it made us humble enough to realise that when things do go right, it's a process, okay? And you mentioned Brexit, you mentioned COVID, you mentioned all those things. Yeah, I mean it's one thing after another at the moment, isn't it? With conflict in Europe and geopolitical events that are going on in the world. It's collectively it's hard. And talking about blame or blaming Liz Truss or so on, I think one of my other mantras is small people worry about small things. Big people worry about big things. And what I mean by that is, if I was walking on the road right now and somebody nudged me in the shoulder, it wouldn't bother me. If somebody cut my car up, it wouldn't bother me anymore. Life's too short to worry about little things. A credit meeting, no. You move on. A big thing someone harming your family member or your house burning down or whatever, then you can apply that energy and really use the energy for those sort of things. And I said this to my administrators who are very successful in the industry at the moment, and if they're watching, they'll know the saying, only use your energy on things that you really need to use it for, because people, both professionally and personally, get tied into so many petty things these days, and the question I get is why? Why apply that energy? Life's so beautiful. Go to the countryside. Go and enjoy the sea. Go and do whatever you like doing, rather than arguing with individuals about 3 feet of space on a parking spot, or somebody nicking the last sandwich in Waitrose, or things like that are pointless, absolutely pointless. And if we can extract some of that anger in our society and our lives, ultimately it could be so much better. And the reason I'm mentioning this is, if we apply this to our profession, don't worry so much if things don't go your way, because like I said, you'll learn more from it. And if you can take the good out of a bad experience, as difficult as it may be, then you will be more of a complete person and more of a better advisor, more of an individual that lenders want to have a relationship with you, more of a respectable figure in the industry, whatever industry you're in. And I think that's quite important. And again, it's the simple things. It's don't worry about small things. Get on with your life. Execute what you want to execute. Concentrate on your clients. Reread your emails. Don't get emotional. Understand the no's. Enjoy the yeses, and walk off into the sunset and have a good life. And that I think is missing. And it may sound not great or whatever, and perhaps not everybody agrees with it, but I'm an advocate of having an easy life, and by doing so, you've got to understand the good and the bad, the ugly and the sad.
Well, I think it's some very very useful philosophical advice there, Matthew. Just turning back to Aquilae, what's the long-term plan? What are you aspiring to?
Okay.
Sort of 2 years, 5 years. What does it look like?
We want to be debt advisory, okay, and we want to be pure debt advisory. So we're going to concentrate purely on structured assets and development. Really build a team of 6, 7, perhaps 8 strong advisors. Reward everybody as a family, and understand how we can retain that team, and everything that we can give them, everything that throughout my career I wanted but perhaps didn't receive at that time, maybe overcome those hurdles, be a bit more generous, and create that sort of place of where people want to come to be professional, be known to be professional, to execute business, client retention, and really enjoy their lives in a sort of philosophical way, if you like, but be respected in the industry for the right reasons, not just doing deals, but for the right reasons, for understanding the no's, for taking bad news in a good way, presenting deals in the right way, creating relationships with people like yourself, having the ability to call, Dimitri and whatnot, and have a laugh, going for breakfast, things like that. I think are quite important, and all in a professional manner is where we want to be. And I think we want to be sustainable. We don't necessarily want to grow inexplicably, but we want to be known as somebody that you can knock on our door if you're a broker, a lender, a client, a friend, and ask that question, and we'll answer it with sincerity.
One of the themes that I'm getting from what you're talking about is I think that you love the process. I follow Lance Armstrong on Instagram, and you can debate the merits of whether he should have retained his Tour de France titles or not. Mm-hmm. I increasingly by the day lean towards he probably should have kept them.
You're a cyclist yourself, aren't you?
I
did the Spanish.
We did the ride in Portugal. Yeah, we rode the length of Portugal. That's right. Well remembered. And but the thing he said, he loved training more than he loved racing, because racing was basically where you get to showcase all the work that you've done in training. But you've got to be successful as a racer. You've got to be a successful trainer, and you've got to love training. and so he learned to love training. He loved the process, and I get the feeling that you're of a similar mindset, that actually it's the little bits in the day to day. It's not the day that it's not the drawdown. It's not the day you draw down. It's not the day you get your page of proc. It's actually it's credit don't like this. Credit don't like this. They've got issues with this and this, and then you've got to go away, and then you've got to go find a solution or provide some sort of corroboration to get credit back on board or whatever. Using an example, a generic example. But I get the impression that that's something that you're passionate about, you care about.
No one's ever actually said that to me, but I think you're absolutely right. That's applying our skills, and actually looking back on the deal that closed on Tuesday, I do feel a little bit empty. That part of the day is gone. And I said to my business partner earlier, I'm a bit worried. I don't know. And he was like, well, why are you worried? You've got lots to do. The whole pipeline buzzing. I know, but that part of it is not there anymore. Yes, it's gone, and we've been paying all the rest of it, but the fun of it's not there anymore. So no,
it's like an old friend.
Well, yeah, it is a little bit like an old friend. I've never thought of it that way, but yeah, no, you're onto something there, and perhaps that's what I'll take from today. Yeah.
I was just thinking about the style of business that you are. I mean, I think one of the challenges you've got is that if you're doing an IM. For those of our audience that don't know what an IM is an investment memorandum. It's basically like it's sort of anywhere between a 10 and 100 page document. Effectively like a prospectus. In the few years I worked in private equity, it was something that we'd routinely receive on large real estate transactions. On the back of that, though, I can't help but draw a parallel, let's say, with a company like HFF, who ended up being acquired by Jones Lang. I actually had someone who worked for me going back 10 years ago, who ended up working at HFF, and then when they got acquired by Jones Lang, he wasn't so happy about that. But could you see a future where once you're established, you're well established, and you're ringing and you're zinging, could you see that kind of corporate activity going on, or you sort of determined to be steadfastly independent?
No, I don't shut down any part of the conversation. So at this moment in time, anything's a possibility. I think we've all got our sort of walking off into the sunset plans. If we were lucky enough to walk down that road as HFF did, and have Jones Lang LaSalle knock on their door, then absolutely we'd listen to that. It's not, that is where we'd like to be and go, if I'm going to be completely honest with you. But we are kind of building our foundations, and once we're set, let's see what the road looks like. Yeah, and also, the market, the rates, people moaning about interest rates being where they are. Well, actually, they don't need to go back down. There's no steadfast rule saying rates have gone up, they must come down. Rates are reflective on many factors of society. And at the moment, from a personal perspective, not a Aquilae or professional, there's not that many reasons for them to go back down. If you look at wage data, inflation, minimum wages going up, we're still above our targets. America, the Fed holding at the moment, their own inflation data indicating that doesn't really allow them to drop their rates. So there's a lot of factors, and people need to live in the moment. And the reason I'm mentioning all of this is going back to your question. We will live in the moment, and whatever that moment allows us to do, we'll take that decision. And I think there's never a right time to do anything at all. If you're waiting to buy a house or waiting to do something because you think that rates are going to drop, or you think that this is going to happen, it's the wrong thing to do, because that moment is different to today's moment. So whatever you're going to do it now. If you can apply that plan and execute it, because I think once you've done something, then naturally it evolves, and because you've done it in that moment, you'll probably profit. Like, for example, if you bought a house a couple of years ago thinking that you're buying at the top of the market. Well, it's gone up in value anyway. You know, if you buy it today at 525 as a base interest, next year in 2 years' time, I won't put a bet on it, but it will probably increase slightly, you know, because real estate does do that. And it's one thing that you can kind of trust, if you like, residential real estate mainly. But yeah, no, so it's about moments and living in moments. And I think if you look too far ahead, you may miss it and miss enjoying it as well, you know. So I think from a corporate perspective at the moment, we're building our business, you know, we've got a good balance sheet, you know, we're capitalized well, we've got a good reputation, good systems, we've got a great set of clients, and we're enjoying the moment is what I'd say.
Yeah, well, I'd love to hear that. I've got probably one more question that I want to ask from a professional standpoint. We can kind of go to we can sort of start the wind down. As I mentioned, I spent a few years working on private equity real estate, and one of the things we were always tasked with was effectively, you know, go out and find the debt yourselves. Don't use a broker. Go out and find the debt yourselves. Mm-hmm. Why? Or how do you know? How would you respond to that? You know, if you went to go and see a, you know, small real estate private equity firm, or, you know, or a propco that had a finance director who's tasked with going out and finding financing, whether that's debt, whether that's senior equity notes.
It's sort of similar to a jack of all trades position, I guess, because if you're a finance director for a developer or whatever, then you've got other roles that you need to be concentrating on. Okay, so if you're diluting those roles and looking for finance additionally to save 1%, in the big scheme of things, you're actually shooting yourself in the foot. A good example is you can represent yourself in court. There's nobody says that you need a lawyer in court, but if you pay a lawyer, you'll probably do a better job. Okay, so again, you know, we are professionals, and a 1% fee, if that really makes a massive difference to you as a client, and you don't see the value of the broker, then it's questionable whether we want to work with the individual anyway, because, you know, ultimately that they are going to be selling houses and they are going to be collecting fees, and everybody does. So it's really understanding what that 1% or 0.75 or whatever that may be gives you. And I think in the big scheme of things, if a fee is that restrictive, it's not somebody that perhaps we want to engage with, because I think, you know, you've got to look at value, okay? And well, let's say somebody knows Avamore and they can go direct to them. Okay, great. But if there's a bump in the road, they can't necessarily ask for a favour, or if 3 months down the line there's a no, who's going to pick that up and quickly rebroke it? So I would say to clients or private equity or individuals that have got finance directors that are mandated to go and find finance, build a relationship with a great structured finance advisor, put parameters in place if you don't want to be paying 1%. We would take a reduced fee if we can see the value of the relationship, okay?
Also, if the deal's big enough, you can operate on a thinner margin.
Exactly, and also if the finance director is going to do most of the work anyway, then yeah, okay, well 1% is not justified. Fine, we'll do it for 0.75 or whatever. That's the meat on the bones. But we do what we do for a reason, and there's a reason that our industry exists, and there's a reason that people like you trust us to bring business to your doors. So that perception from the client side or the FD side or the PE side has to be looking at the value of the individual, and that's always what I position. If it really bothers you, 20 grand, 50 grand fee or whatever it may be, then fine, you know, it's okay. We don't want to transact with you because we want to bring value to your business, and that value in this market is much more prominent than it perhaps would be in a low interest rate environment where the sun is shining. But and in that instance, okay, I could probably understand why people may look to circumvent a broking or advisory position. But, you know, play each player in their position and your team will do really well. If you start messing that up a little bit and thinking, okay, well, we've done 3 deals of Avamore, now we want to build a hotel, we'll just go back to Avamore, not realising that perhaps that asset class isn't something that you guys do. And then, you know, thinking, okay, well, what do we do? Do we call the guy that we had an argument with about 1% 2 years ago? It's not it doesn't work. I think it's got to be a more holistic approach from that side, and understanding, actually look at the value of what it is, and or do a deal, because that's what we do. I pay fees on transactions that I do. I pay fees to many people, and I don't mind paying fees because I gain fees myself. I'll negotiate a little bit here and a little bit there, but ultimately, I recognise value in each profession that I deal with, and that comes with a price.
I recently did a deal with a property deal, a commercial property deal, and I used a commercial property agent he's called Tom Farkas. He works at Colliers. He's a really good guy, and he sold me a building going back 2 years ago, and then just made the effort to connect with me. And he kept sending me deal after deal after deal, but he was incredible. He was sort of pushy, but in the right way, and but patient, but also very patient. And he sort of got to know me and got to understand what I wanted, and just kept going. And then September, just a gem, and we but it took a while to get the deal done. And he managed the process brilliantly, managed the other agent brilliantly, so patient, and then completes back end of March, sends me he calls me up, sends me a WhatsApp. He said, can I put my invoice in there? And he said, can I have, is it okay if I charge you 1%? And I think in the past, I would have, I try and nickel and dime. And I thought, I think he's earned this. Like he's definitely earned this. It's 2 years of work on it. It's gone into this deal. The 50K that I'm paying him, whatever. It's not. Maybe you couldn't fully. If you really wanted to be mean, you could be like, maybe I can't justify it for this transaction. But actually, you can justify it because that's not a fee for the one introduction. I mean, let me just say there was a lot more work than the single introduction he made. You're paying for the 2 years of effort that he put in trying to find something for me, for our family, that will, it's such a gem. I think. I hope I'm right.
I'm sure you are.
I hope I'm right. And I paying nearly, just over half what our vendor paid for it 7 years ago. Well let commercial building or buildings. I think that's a price worth paying. And not only that, I'm also paying for probably another year or two's goodwill with him anyway. And so I've already had another intro this week on another portfolio of assets. I'm still digesting the last purchase, so it'll be a little while before I buy anything else. But I think for me, with that one, it's loaded the point too much. But I think for me, actually, I think I've definitely now fully appreciate the value and the power of advice and advisory relationships. And whilst you could nick $5,000 or $10,000 here and there, actually, it's a competitive marketplace. And the thing is, what I bring it back to is that if I don't pay Tom properly, the next time someone else who has appetite for that type of asset is around and is in competition for me, and Tom's got that early, because Tom's a good agent, he'll have the early, he's going to give it to the other client, he's not going to give it to me. Oh, yeah. And the same way that the person who's the client who's in competition with the guy who won't pay you a fee will be giving you that finance mandate, and you will be able to give them that extra bit of leverage or that extra reduction in price that enables them to go and win the asset. So
I think you've hit the nail on the head, and it's a great example that you've shared. And and I'm sure the asset will be successful, and it will create a legacy for the family, as you say. It's incredibly important, and we give you an example. We completed on a transaction in January, and it was supposed to complete pre-Christmas. Lucky we double-checked the contracts, because it was a purchase from a local authority who naturally would have an overage in there, but they also had a covenant in there. And bearing in mind this is an asset that's going to be refinanced a couple of times because there's a development angle and so on and so on. And I looked at it and I said, whoa, don't spend a couple of £1 million on this right now, because this is an unnegotiated contract. The covenant states that any lender coming into this in the next decade, it has to enter the covenant, which is restrictive. So we asked to speak to the lawyers and said, look, you've got to renegotiate this. It's unfundable. It's illiquid. The client really, really saw the value because he was on the moment of exchange. They went back 2 days later, the covenant was removed. And, 14th of January, off it went. So little things like that, you've got, but that's knowing and understanding real estate, and knowing and understanding covenants, and actually reading things through. And I think fee justification. I mean, that's a £2 million savings. That would have been an illiquid asset. So look, fees or 5% swing on appraisals. If they kill deals, then again, talking about saying no to people. Those are probably the ones that you can walk away from and say no, but they're the ones that will probably come back, and you'll build a really good relationship with them, ironically. But stand your ground. You deserve to be paid. We take risks. We're commercial. We start our businesses. We walk the plank, and we should be rewarded for that as long as we serve our clients correctly.
Well, quite right. Okay, well, just starting the wind down now. Just want to talk a little bit outside of work. What's the what do you do to keep yourself sort of on the straight and narrow? You've got any sports, any lifestyle. Is there any sort of aspects of lifestyle that sort of keep you kind of regular, keep you going? Stop you from sort of exploding in the middle of Oxford Street.
Well, I've got 2 young children now, so time is limited. But I
said things that are going to make you less likely to explode in the middle of Oxford Street.
I think I enjoy art. I like abstract and melancholy art. So you may find me browsing artistic venues or looking at things that maybe I'd like to acquire, which gives me a sort of sense of grounding. I also like quiet time and just I can be on my own and sit on my own and just collect my thoughts sometimes, especially when the children aren't at home. It's nice to be able to do something. Sports, I'm keen Tottenham fan, unfortunately. Maybe edit that bit out.
we are.
Edit that bit out.
We are. Matthew may have forgotten he's talking to an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, I knew that. So that actually makes me go crazy in the middle of Oxford Street. But, and just being, I'm a family man these days, and going to the gym, swimming, running, all the sort of listed activities that individuals do. I think it's important to balance that out, and just enjoy what you've collected through life, and try and give that back to your family. And I think spending time with my wife and children is probably the best time I can spend, because they give me the reasons to do what we do in our business, and it's not always easy, but I'm sure in 20 years' time, I'll look back and won't remember the hard parts. I'll only remember the easy and nice parts, and wish they were upon us again. So it's a hard, difficult question to answer because it's a variety of things, but it's surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals, having the right company. Don't let life get under your skin. Enjoy, smile, wake up and smile. So I'll give you an example, a bit of a strange one, but I like making random people smile as well. Okay, so I walked into Leon about a month ago, and there's a craze at the moment, people having this milk, that milk, the other milk, and all the rest of it. It was a Monday morning, quite quiet, and there was a lady serving some coffee and somebody on the counter. And I walked in, and I thought, all right, let me crack a joke here. So, hi there, can I get a latte, please? Sure, what milk would you like? Can I have kangaroo milk? But it's got to be under 3 months. And the lady, coffee, turned around and goes, what? And I was like, yes, I'm allergic to oat, this, that, and the other. It's got to be that. And, I kept a straight face for about 5 minutes. Well, a couple of seconds, sorry. And then I was like, I'm only joking, making him, and they both burst out laughing. And for me, that's quite nice. And that gives me a little bit of joy in the morning. And it kind of starts the day off well, because then you walk into the office with a smile. The receptionist in our building in Mayfair, I always crack a joke or just have that little laugh. And there's little relationships that I have in my life. So, for example, I live in Surrey. And my walk to the station there's always a gardener on a Friday, and he's a keen cricketer. I like cricket as well. So he knows that I like cricket, and he's always waiting there at 7:30, 7:15, whatever. He's like, Matthew, over the fence. And we always have a 5-minute chat about the batting or the cricket or whatever it may be. And that tiny moment, that little relationship, I don't even know his name. I think it's called Tim. But those moments, the Leon lady, the receptionist, are all simple, but if you put them together, they do give you a bit of joy in what's a bit very busy and distracted lifestyle at the moment, based on where I am in my journey.
I love that anecdote. I mean, it's a nice segue actually to then talking about mentors. In a 26-year career, you will have had a lot of influential people that I say 26-year career, obviously being of similar age to me, you've had even more years of influences, not just through your career, but also family and parents, family, and all that sort of thing. Who can you are there any particular people that stand out to you as having been really big influences on your life and your career up to this point?
Yeah, there are actually. There's probably quite a few. I think there's again, it's about individuals that I've worked with in the past. I was with one yesterday, had a lunch, which is perhaps why I'm slightly tender this morning, but this afternoon. But yeah, look, and for me, it's important to look up to people. It's important to sort of see why you should respect the individual in front of you, because there is always somebody in front of you. There's no one in particular, if I'm completely honest, but there were moments of mentoring. Julian Ingle, for example, he was one of my strong mentors. He gave me real ambition in times where you start questioning yourself. Allowed me to have the tenacity to bank what was the biggest deal at the time in mid-teens. The largest proc fee probably for one of the brokerages at that time that they've ever seen before. So and that deal was an 18-month deal, and I was a young sort of broker hoping to do a couple of things, and collectively we brought in a huge ship to port, and he allowed me to do that. And I think to this day I do look up to him, and we work together. He's one of my ecosystem, if you like. But you've got to also have that self-belief, and I think if you look at others too much, you'll miss your own sort of path, and I think that's quite important as well.
Yeah, so it's like that sort of internet memes going to first of all, I want to thank me. Yeah, that sort of thing. And the sort of last question, it's a closing tradition now on the show, is what would you have said to your younger self and why? If you look back to maybe your late teenage years.
You've got 2 ears, use them. That's what I'd say. Don't use your mouth, use your ears, because you can do so much more listening than talking. So much more. And you can get so much further by using both ears rather than your mouth. Because a lot of people think, putting thoughts forward, arguing the point, doing this, doing that. Yeah, absolutely, at the right time. But we've been given 2 of these, and I think there's a reason for that. That's what I would say.
It's funny. We were just having a board offsite, talking about vision and strategy for the next few years and how we're going to put it together. How we're going to sort of make that a reality. And we're talking about and along the way we were talking about how we should engage with one another. And I can say this without, it's not, this is just a snippet, so it's not breaching confidences, but one of the rules was listen first, talk second. So it's exactly the same principle.
Oh, yeah.
Matthew, we've had a great conversation. You've been a fantastic guest. I mean, and I genuinely mean that. You've been very generous with your time and with your answers. No doubt, people are going to want to reach out to you and talk to you more. Either maybe try and get some mentorship, or maybe they're a client and they want to get funded. What's the best way for people to get hold of you? What's the best way for people to reach you? Social media or otherwise?
Social media, on our website, you can reach out, or if they ask you, you can pass on my details.
Of course.
Our doors are always open, whether it's free advice that you're after or some transactional advice that you'd like to understand. Reach out. We're more than happy to help, whether you're a broker, lender, client, or something else these days.
Well, we'll have all of Matthew's contact details, website details, and social tags in the show notes. So don't worry, we'll make sure that you don't have to go hunting the dark web to get hold of Matthew's details. If you might still get Matthew's account number and sort code, but that's a different story.
You'll get a secret of Aquilae there.
But no, on that bombshell, thank you, Matthew. It's been a pleasure, and we'll have you on again soon.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's an absolute pleasure spending time with you.
Cheers.
Thanks.